Hey everyone, tonight we're diving deep into the dust and the roar of ancient Rome, but far from the Colosseum's gladiatorial clashes. We're heading to the training grounds of the Roman charioteers, exploring the surprisingly meticulous and frankly terrifying path they undertook. Imagine the thundering hooves, the creak of leather, the sheer unbridled power of four horses you're supposed to control, with little more than glorified string and a prayer. It's a world away from your evening commute, though arguably with similar levels of stress. Honestly, with the kind of training they endured, you probably wouldn't survive the first week. I know I'd be crying for my mama by day two, if not sooner. So, before you get too comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Feel free to share where you're listening from and what time it is for you in the comments below. I love seeing how far these stories travel. Now, let's dim the lights, maybe get that fan going for some gentle white noise, and begin tonight's journey together. You find yourself standing at the edge of a sprawling, sun-baked field just outside the bustling city walls of Rome. The air is thick with the smell of horses, dust, and that faint, ever-present Roman aroma of, well, a lot of people living very closely together. This isn't the gleaming marble facade of the Circus Maximus, not yet. This is where the dream of becoming a charioteer begins, or more often than not, where it sputters out like a poorly made lamp. These are the ludi, the training stables, a place of sweat, toil, and the relentless pursuit of a skill that could bring you unimaginable fame or a very quick, very public end. It's basically the ancient world's most dangerous unpaid internship. The year is, let's say, 150 AED, during the reign of Antoninus Pius, a relatively peaceful time for the empire, which means Romans had plenty of leisure time to dedicate to their favorite pastime, watching other people risk their lives for entertainment. And oh, did they love chariot racing. The city lived and breathed for it. Fortunes were won and lost on the races, riots could erupt over a disputed finish, and the charioteers themselves, the successful ones, were the superstars of their day. Bigger than any gladiator, wealthier than some senators. But that glory is a distant shimmer from where you stand now. You're just a hopeful, a novitiate, probably young, wiry, and possessing that particular blend of desperation and recklessness that makes a good candidate. Perhaps you're a slave, dreaming that victory in the circus could one day buy your freedom. Or maybe you're a provincial lad from Hispania or Gaul, drawn by tales of Roman spectacle, hoping to make a name for yourself. Historians still debate whether the earliest charioteers were primarily slaves seeking freedom or paid professionals from lower classes, though by this era it was a mix, with a clear path to immense wealth and social elevation, regardless of origin. It wasn't common, but even some freeborn Romans, perhaps from impoverished families, or those with a daredevil streak, might try their luck, though the senatorial elite officially looked down upon such public displays, while secretly being some of the most rabid fans and betters, of course. Let's imagine you've managed to attach yourself to one of the great racing factions, or factionies. These were the teams, the lifeblood of the sport. There were four primary ones: the Reds, Rusata; the Whites, Albata; the Blues, Veneta; and the Greens, Prasina. The intense, almost fanatical loyalty these factions inspired is a well-documented historical fact. They were more than just teams, they were social and political entities with stable, staff, and legions of supporters throughout the empire. Each faction had its own training facilities, its own scouting network, and its own fiercely guarded secrets. Getting into one was the first hurdle. You wouldn't just walk up and apply. There wasn't an Indeed.com for aspiring charioteers. You needed a connection or to show some raw talent that caught the eye of a Dominus Factionis, faction owner, or one of his scouts. Maybe you were known in your village for being unnaturally good with horses, or perhaps you won a local, unsanctioned race that someone important happened to witness. Their HR department was probably just a burly ex-charioteer looking you up and down, checking if you had all your limbs and then grunting either an approval or a dismissal. Assuming you've made it past that initial, no doubt intimidating, once over, your real education begins. And it starts not with a chariot, but with the horses. These aren't just any horses. Roman racing horses were specially bred, often imported from Hispania and North Africa, prized for their speed, stamina, and crucially, their temperament. They were smaller than many modern breeds, more like ponies or light horses, but incredibly strong and agile. You'd be assigned to the stables, mucking out stalls, grooming, feeding. This wasn't just grunt work. It was your first lesson in understanding these animals. You needed to learn their quirks, their moods. A charioteer who didn't understand his horses was a dead man. You'd learn to recognize the subtle flick of an ear that signaled irritation, the shift in weight that meant a horse was about to bolt. It's like learning a new language, but if you get the grammar wrong, you get trampled. Fun times. Your first lessons in actual riding would be bareback, or perhaps with a simple cloth pad. No saddles with high canels and pommels, and certainly no stirrups. Those wouldn't become common in Europe for centuries. You'd learn balance through repetition, through countless tumbles to the dusty ground. Your thighs would burn, your back would ache, but you'd haul yourself up and try again. The trainers, often retired charioteers themselves, men with names like Diocles or Scorpus still whispered in awe, were not known for their gentle pedagogy. They were called doctores or magistri, and their methods were harsh. A lash for sloppiness, a torrent of abuse for a moment's hesitation. They had to be. The Circus Maximus was no place for the timid or the unprepared. They weren't running a therapy session, they were forging weapons. Once you could stay on a single horse without looking like a sack of particularly uncoordinated potatoes, you'd progress to handling multiple horses. First two, then three, then the standard four of the quadriga, the four-horse chariot. You'd learn to guide them with reins made of leather, holding them in your left hand, while your right hand would typically hold a light whip. Not so much for brutalizing the animals into speed, but for signaling, for correcting, for maintaining the delicate balance of the team. Imagine trying to get four creatures, each with its own mind, to move as one at speed, with other teams trying to cut you off or crash into you. It's less like driving a car and more like conducting a very fast, very angry orchestra. And the reins. This is a detail that always makes me wince. Roman charioteers didn't just hold the reins. For better leverage and control, they would often wrap them around their waists. This gave them immense power to steer with their whole body, leaning into turns using their core strength to guide thousands of pounds of horseflesh. But it also meant that if they crashed, if they were thrown from the chariot, they could be dragged, tangled in the reins, pulled along the track, trampled by their own horses or those of their competitors. This is why every charioteer carried a falx, a curved knife tucked into their tunic or belt. Its purpose? To cut themselves free in an instant. The fact that this was standard operating procedure tells you everything you need to A, the danger involved, and B, how utterly bonkers these individuals were. It's like your driving instructor telling you, okay, here are the keys, the accelerator, the brake, and here's a machete to hack off your seatbelt if you flip into a ravine. Have fun. The chariots themselves, the cuirass, were marvels of lightweight engineering. They had to be incredibly light to maximize speed, often made of wood and leather, with two small spoked wheels. They offered virtually no protection. They were little more than a platform on wheels, a flimsy basket open at the back. Step onto one for the first time and it would feel precariously unstable. You'd practice just balancing in a stationary chariot, then one being pulled slowly. You'd learn how to shift your weight to help steer, how to absorb the shocks as it bumped over the uneven practice ground. Early drills would involve endless laps at a walking pace, then a trot. Learning the feel of the chariot, the rhythm of the horses, the subtle cues transmitted through the reins. It would be monotonous, grueling, your muscles screaming in protest. You'd spend hours under the hot Roman sun, the dust coating your skin, your throat parched. Water breaks were probably not a spa-like experience with cucumber slices. Parallel to this practical training was an intense physical regimen. Charioteers needed incredible upper body strength, powerful legs for balance, and phenomenal core stability. They also needed stamina to endure races that could last for 7 laps around the massive Circus Maximus, a distance of several miles, all while under immense physical and mental strain. Their diet would have been carefully controlled, though perhaps not up to modern Olympic standards. Think less protein shakes and more barley, beans, and whatever cheap protein they could get. It wasn't about sculpted beach bodies, it was about functional, resilient strength. There are even accounts of certain factions having their own theories on athlete nutrition. One rather strange, or perhaps simply practical detail you might encounter is the use of specific herbal concoctions or poultices, unique to each faction's stables, believed to aid in muscle recovery or even enhance a horse's performance. The ancient equivalent of secret sports drinks, probably tasting like disappointment and old socks. You'd also be indoctrinated into the culture of your faction. The Greens and Blues by this period were the dominant forces, their rivalry legendary. The Reds and Whites still competed fiercely, but the big money and the biggest stars were often with Veneta or Prasina. You'd learn your faction's racing style, their traditional rivals, their heroes from the past. This wasn't just a job, it was an identity. Your fellow trainees, your doctories, the stable hands. These were your new family, your cohort in this incredibly demanding world. The pressure to succeed wasn't just internal, it was for the honor of the faction. Letting them down was unthinkable, and as a novitiate, you wouldn't be anywhere near the Circus Maximus itself for a long time. Most of your early training would take place at these auxiliary fields, or perhaps smaller, private circuses owned by wealthy patrons or the factions themselves. Here you'd learn the basics of track etiquette, such a polite term for what was often a brutal free-for-all. How to take a turn without losing too much speed, how to position yourself in a pack, how to anticipate the moves of other, training charioteers. You'd learn to listen for the thunder of hooves behind you, the shouts of other drivers, the roar of your doctor from the sidelines if you messed up. The soundscape alone would be overwhelming at first. One of the most difficult skills to master would be the whip. Not the brutal flogging you might imagine, but a precise instrument. A flick to the flank of a lagging horse, a crack in the air to encourage the team, a way to signal your intentions, or to deliberately mislead an opponent. Different factions and even different star charioteers might develop their own whip techniques. It was an extension of the driver's will, a way to communicate complex commands to four animals in the heat of the moment. Practicing this would involve hours of targeting, perhaps aiming at posts or markers until the whip felt like a part of your own arm. You'd probably whip yourself more times than the target in the early days, leading to some very unsuperstar-like yelps of pain. The psychological conditioning was as important as the physical. You had to learn to control your fear. The thought of a crash, the splintering wood, the screaming horses, the tangle of bodies and reins would always be there, lurking in the back of your mind. But you had to push it down, to focus, to maintain an almost zen-like calm in the midst of chaos. A moment of panic could be fatal. The doctors would push you, trying to break you, to see if you had the mental fortitude. They'd create high-pressure situations in training, perhaps having more experienced trainees harass you on the track, simulating the brutal tactics of a real race. If you flinched, if you hesitated, you were out. Or worse, you were deemed not ready and kept in the lower rungs of training, watching others advance. The attrition rate for trainees must have been immense. For every charioteer who made it to the Circus Maximus, countless others would have failed, or quit, or been permanently injured. You'd also learn about the spina, the central barrier of the circus, and the meti, the tight turning post at each end. These were the critical points of the race. Taking the meti too wide meant losing precious ground. Taking them too tight risked a catastrophic collision. You'd practice these turns endlessly, learning the precise moment to start your turn, how to get your inside horse almost to brush the post without actually hitting it. It was a deadly ballet, and the meti were notorious for causing pileups, the infamous naufragia or shipwrecks as the Romans poetically called them. Imagine trying to make a hairpin turn at 35 miles per hour in what's essentially a wicker basket pulled by four agitated animals with 7 other guys trying to do the exact same thing right next to you. It's a recipe for disaster, or if you're Roman, a thrilling Tuesday afternoon. The hierarchy within the stables would be strict. As a newcomer, you'd be at the bottom, taking orders from everyone. But slowly, if you showed promise, you might earn small privileges, perhaps better rations, or the chance to work with slightly better horses. You'd watch the more experienced trainees, the ones who were starting to race in smaller local events, with a mixture of awe and envy. They carried themselves differently, with a confidence that you were still striving for. You'd listen to their stories, their boasts, their complaints about particular horses or unfair treatment by a doctor. It was a closed, intense world, and every scrap of information, every piece of advice was hoarded. One thing you'd learn quickly is that it wasn't just about speed, it was about tactics, cunning, and sometimes outright cheating if you could get away with it. While there were rules, enforcing them in the heat of a race was difficult. You'd hear tales from the older hands about legendary charioteers who were masters of the subtle art of interference. A slight bump here, crowding an opponent there, using the whip to accidentally flick an opponent's horse in the eye. These weren't things they'd explicitly teach you in Charioteering 101, but you'd pick them up by observation, by understanding the brutal reality of the sport. The Romans admired skill and bravery, but they also loved a winner, and the line between clever tactics and fouls could be blurry. Your days would be long, starting before dawn and ending well after dusk. There was always something to do: mucking out, grooming, harness repairs, physical training, endless drills on the track. Sleep would be a precious commodity, your body aching, your mind replaying the day's lessons and failures. Friendships would form, born of shared hardship and ambition. Rivalries, too, as you competed for the attention of the doctors and the chance to advance. You'd learn to read the expressions on the trainers' faces to anticipate their moods. A rare nod of approval from a seasoned doctor would feel like winning a small victory. It's the kind of environment where a compliment is as rare as a sober senator after a feast, so you'd cherish it. The dream of the Circus Maximus, the roar of hundreds of thousands of spectators, the laurel wreath, the adulation, the prize money, that's what kept you going. It was a powerful dream, powerful enough to make you endure the pain, the fear, and the sheer exhaustion of this meticulous, brutal training. You are not just learning to drive a chariot. You are being remade, stripped down, and rebuilt into something capable of surviving, and perhaps even thriving, in one of the ancient world's most demanding and deadly arenas. The sun sets over the training grounds, casting long shadows. Another day is done. You are one step closer, or perhaps one step further away. Only time and your ability to stay on that damn chariot will tell. The days bleed into weeks, the weeks into months. The raw sting of constant failure begins to lessen, replaced by a dull, persistent ache in muscles you didn't even know you possessed. You're still a trainee, make no mistake, but you're no longer the wide-eyed, clumsy novitiate who nearly fainted at the sight of a four-horse team. You've learned to walk with the particular swagger of someone who spends more time with horses than humans. A slight bow in the legs, a constant alertness in the eyes. You can now stay on a horse mostly, and you haven't been dragged by a runaway chariot for, well, at least a few days. That's progress, Roman style. Your calloused hands are a testament to the hours spent gripping reins, the leather now feeling almost like an extension of your own skin. You've learned the names of dozens of horses, their temperaments, which ones are prone to spooking at shadows, and which ones will try to take a chunk out of your arm if you're not paying attention during grooming. It's like a very specific, very high-stakes dating game where every partner weighs half a ton and communicates primarily through snorts. Your training now moves beyond the solitary drills of balance and basic control. You begin to practice with other trainees, a small group of you, learning to navigate a track that is no longer empty. The practice ground, once a vast expanse, now feels claustrophobically small as 2, then 3, then 4 training chariots attempt to circle it together. This is where the real terror and the first glimmers of exhilaration begin to intertwine. Your doctor, perched on a slightly elevated platform, or sometimes even riding alongside on a sturdy gelding, barks instructions, his voice cutting through the clatter of wheels and the thudding of hooves. You, boy. You're too wide on the turn. Are you trying to give them an engraved invitation to pass? Or, watch that inside horse, he's slacking. Does he think this is a leisurely stroll through the forum? The sarcasm is as thick as the dust you're constantly inhaling. It's probably the Roman equivalent of a motivational poster, just with more yelling and fewer eagles soaring over inspirational quotes. You learn the rudiments of racecraft, how to hold your line, how to read the intentions of the charioteer next to you by the subtle shifts in his posture or the angle of his whip. You practice controlled overtaking, a delicate maneuver that involves judging speed, distance, and the temperament of both your own team and your opponent's. Get it wrong, and you risk a wheel-to-wheel collision, the kind that sends chariots spinning and drivers flying. You also learn defensive driving Roman chariot style, how to legally or semi-legally obstruct an opponent, how to use the width of your chariot and team to make it difficult for them to pass. It's less about pure speed at this stage and more about control, precision, and developing that sixth sense for what's happening around you in the swirling chaos. The first time another trainee's wheel comes within inches of your own, the jolt of adrenaline is so sharp it tastes metallic. But you hold your nerve, you make the subtle correction, and you survive. That small victory feels monumental. There are, of course, accidents. Even in training, with blunted enthusiasm and perhaps slightly slower speeds, the potential for disaster is ever present. You see fellow trainees thrown, sometimes spectacularly. You witness the dreaded naufragia firsthand. A chariot flipping, horses panicking, the air filled with shouts and the splintering of wood. The doctors and stable hands are quick to react, disentangling horses, dragging away a dazed or injured driver. There's a grim efficiency to it all. You learn to steel yourself against these sights. Pity is a luxury you can't afford. Instead, you analyze what went wrong, how to avoid that same fate. And you learn the importance of that falx tucked into your belt. You practice drawing it, a smooth, swift motion, even when your heart is hammering against your ribs. It's a morbid skill, like learning to tie a tourniquet before you've even seen a battle, but an essential one. Your understanding of the horses deepens. You learn that a four-horse team, a quadriga, is not just four individual animals, but a complex unit. There are the two central horses, the yoke horses, yugals, who bear the brunt of the chariot's weight through the yoke and pole. Then there are the outer two, the trace horses, funales, attached by ropes or traces, providing extra pulling power and crucial for steering. Typically, one of the trace horses, often the left-hand one, was the lead horse, the cleverest and most responsive of the team, the one that guided the others. You learn how to manage a team that might not be perfectly matched. One horse stronger, another faster, one lazier, another more excitable. It's a constant balancing act, requiring subtle adjustments of the reins. A word of encouragement here, a flick of the whip there. Historians still debate the exact level of autonomy individual charioteers had in choosing their race tactics versus strictly following faction orders from their doctors. But at this stage, you're learning the foundational skills that would allow for either scenario. You're building the intuition that allows you to feel what your team needs, almost before they need it. You become intimately familiar with your equipment, its strengths, and its many, many weaknesses. The chariot, as you know, is designed for speed, not safety. Its lightness means it can be terrifyingly fragile. You learn to check the wheels before every session, listening for creaks or wobbles that could signal an impending failure. You inspect the leather straps of the harness, looking for wear and tear. Your body protection remains minimal. A leather or padded cap, perhaps, offering scant protection against a direct blow. Your tunic is sleeveless, allowing for freedom of movement. Around your torso, you might wear fasci, long strips of cloth wound tightly like a boxer's hand wraps, offering some support to your back and abdomen against the constant jolting and strain. It's not exactly an airbag in crumple zones, more like hoping for the best with a bit of strategic padding. The Romans were big on hope as a safety feature. The internal politics of the stable become clearer. There's a definite pecking order among the trainees, and you're constantly, subtly jockeying for position. Catching the eye of a senior doctor or the Dominus Factionis himself during a practice session can mean better horses for your next drill, or perhaps being earmarked for more advanced training. The condottieri, the specialized horse grooms and trainers, who often had an almost mystical bond with their charges, are also key figures. Earning their respect, showing them that you care for the horses and value their expertise, can make your life significantly easier. They might share a tip about a particular horse's temperament or advocate for you with the doctories. Conversely, incur their displeasure, and you might find yourself assigned the most recalcitrant, bad-tempered nags in the stable. It's like any workplace, really, just with more manure and a higher chance of being trampled. And then the day comes. You've shown enough promise, enough resilience. Your doctor informs you, perhaps with his usual lack of fanfare, you tomorrow. Ostia, small race, don't disgrace us. That you're to compete in your first real event. Not the Circus Maximus, not yet, but a smaller local circus, perhaps in a nearby port town like Ostia, or a private event hosted by a wealthy nobleman. The knot in your stomach tightens to the size of a small melon. This is it. This is what all those months of sweat, fear, and dust have been leading to. The night before, sleep is an elusive phantom. You run the race over and over in your mind, picturing every turn, every possible scenario. The journey to this minor circus is an experience in itself. You travel with a small contingent from your faction, a couple of other junior charioteers, some stable hands, the precious horses carefully transported. The atmosphere is a mix of nervous excitement and grim determination. When you arrive, the scale is smaller than the imagined grandeur of Rome's great arena, but there's a crowd, albeit a modest one. There are other factions represented. There's the smell of food stalls, the murmur of betting. It feels real, it is real. Putting on your faction's colors, perhaps the vibrant red or the stark white or the coveted blue or green, feels like donning a sacred vestment. It's a moment of pride, quickly followed by a fresh wave of nausea. You try to remember everything your doctor has drilled into you. Keep your head, watch the horse on your left, don't bunch up at the first meta. Easier said than done when your hands are slick with sweat, and your heart is trying to beat its way out of your chest. Your first race is likely a blur. The roar of even a small crowd is deafening after the relative quiet of the training grounds. The other chariots seem impossibly close, their wheels like hungry mouths eager to devour your own. The horses, sensing the excitement, are more keyed up than usual, their energy a live wire thrumming through the reins. You make mistakes. Perhaps you take a turn too wide or get boxed in, or nearly lose control of your team on the straight. But you also do things right. You remember your training. You lean into the turns. You use your whip sparingly but effectively. You manage to avoid a collision. Maybe you don't win. Maybe you come in last, but you finish. You bring your chariot and horses back in one piece. As you slow down, the adrenaline begins to recede, leaving you shaky and utterly drained, but also with a profound sense of accomplishment. You faced the beast and you survived. Your doctor might offer a grunt, which you've learned to interpret as high praise, or he might list every single one of your mistakes in excruciating detail. Either way, you've crossed a threshold. You're no longer just a trainee, you're a charioteer, albeit a very junior one. This probably doesn't come with a pay raise, by the way. At this stage, you're likely still living on basic rations provided by the faction. The real money, the kind that could buy villas and slaves of your own, is reserved for the stars of the Circus Maximus. The financial backing required to run these factions and maintain stables full of expensive imported horses, chariots, and a vast staff of trainers, grooms, and artisans was immense, often coming directly from the emperor himself or from powerful, wealthy syndicates of businessmen and senators. They weren't investing all that sestertii for you to come in last in a local derby, so the pressure remains. Back at the training stables, your status has subtly shifted. You've tasted real competition. You have stories to tell, however modest. But the training doesn't stop. If anything, it intensifies. Your mistakes in that first race are dissected, analyzed, and drilled out of you. You learn more advanced tactics, how to work in concert with a teammate from your own faction, if you're lucky enough to race in a pair, how to recognize and exploit an opponent's weakness, how to handle different track conditions, a dusty track, a slightly damp track, each presenting its own challenges. You might even start to specialize. Some charioteers were known for their explosive starts, others for their skill in navigating the treacherous turns, others for their stamina in longer races. Your doctors would be watching, assessing your natural strengths and trying to cultivate them. A peculiar detail that might emerge is the almost superstitious attention paid to the horse's hooves and the track surface itself. Experienced grooms and charioteers could seemingly read the track, noting how compacted the sand was, where it was looser, where it might be unexpectedly slick. They'd also have their own secret recipes for hoof ointments and treatments, believing these could give their horses a slight edge in traction or endurance. You might see a grizzled old conductor muttering to himself as he examines a hoof, his pronouncements treated with the utmost seriousness. It's the kind of lore that isn't written down, passed on through observation and hushed conversations in the stables. like a chef who won't share his secret ingredient, even if that ingredient is just an extra pinch of salt, or in this case, a special kind of mud. You also learn about the less savory side of the sport, the undercurrents of intrigue and sabotage. Chariot racing was big business, and where there's big business, there's often dirty dealing. Rumors of rivals trying to lame an opponent's star horse, of attempts to bribe officials, or even poison other charioteers were not uncommon, though proving such things was notoriously difficult. Your faction would be fiercely protective of its assets, both equine and human. Security around the stables, especially for the top horses and charioteers, would be tight. As a junior, you're not a prime target, but you learn to be wary, to trust only those within your own faction's inner circle. It adds another layer of tension to an already stressful existence. It's not enough to be fat, you also have to be lucky and perhaps a little bit paranoid. The physical toll continues. Injuries are a constant companion. Sprained wrists, bruised ribs, pulled muscles. You learn to endure pain, to push through discomfort. The faction would have its own medical staff or access to physicians skilled in treating the kinds of injuries common to charioteers. Their methods might seem brutal by modern standards, no keyhole surgery here, but they were often effective in getting a man back on his feet, or at least back in the chariot. You become familiar with the smell of liniments and poultices, the feel of bandages being wound tightly. It's all part of the job description, like, must be able to lift 50 pounds and not mind occasional dismemberment. Slowly, painstakingly, you are climbing the ladder. More local races, perhaps a few small wins. You learn how to handle a slightly larger crowd, how to deal with the pressure of expectation, however small. You might even earn a tiny share of prize money, enough to buy a few comforts, or perhaps to send a little back to your family if you have one. Each success, however minor, fuels the ambition, makes the dream of the Circus Maximus seem a little less impossible. You are being shaped, hardened, refined. The meticulous training, once a source of endless frustration, now starts to make a terrifying kind of sense. Every drill, every harsh word, every near disaster was a lesson, a preparation for the day when you might finally enter the great arena in Rome, where the stakes are highest and the roar of the crowd is the sound of immortality or oblivion. The path is still long and fraught with peril, but for the first time, you can see the faint outline of the summit through the dust and the haze. You are no longer just surviving, you are beginning to compete. Years now seem to have compressed into a relentless cycle of training, travel, and the occasional heart-stopping blur of a race. You are no longer the trembling novice, nor even the earnest junior. You are seasoned. Your body is a roadmap of healed injuries and toughened sinew. Your gaze is steady, accustomed to judging distances at speed, to reading the subtle language of horses and the even more subtle, and often treacherous, intentions of men. You've won races, enough of them in the provincial circuits and smaller Roman ludi, that your name, whispered at first, is now spoken with a certain degree of grudging respect within your faction, and perhaps a flicker of recognition amongst the keenest followers of the sport. You've learned that a small victory today is just an invitation for a bigger challenge tomorrow. It's like climbing a ladder where every rung you reach just reveals how much higher the ladder actually goes. Ancient Rome's career advice was basically, don't look down and also try not to get impaled. The air around you changes. The talk in the stables, once focused on local rivals and the quirks of provincial tracks, now buzzes with the name of Rome, of the Circus Maximus. The Dominus Factionis has been seen watching your practice sessions more frequently, his expression unreadable, but his mere presence a weighty omen. Your doctor, who once seemed to view you as a particularly unpromising species of fungus, now occasionally addresses you with something approaching professional courtesy, which in his case means slightly less vitriol in his critiques. Your line through the last meta was acceptable, he might concede, which from him is the equivalent of a ticker tape parade. Then the summons arrives. Not for another dusty race in some sun-baked Italian town. This time, it's for Rome. You're being brought into the faction's main stables in the city to train for the possibility of racing in the Circus Maximus itself. The news settles not with a bang, but with a quiet internal hum of terror and elation. This is the dream, the pinnacle. Everything you've endured, every sacrifice, every moment of doubt has led to this. The thought of that vast arena, the one you've only heard about in reverent, awestruck tones, is enough to make your palms sweat, even now. The faction's Roman stables are a world unto themselves. Larger, more opulent, teeming with staff, veterinarians, master harness makers, specialized grooms for every conceivable equine need, and of course, the elite doctors who train the stars. The horses here are the best of the best. Sleek, powerful animals that seem to vibrate with suppressed energy. The chariots are lighter, more finely tuned. The atmosphere is thick with ambition and unspoken rivalries. You are still relatively junior here, a provincial success story, but in Rome you are a small fish in a very large, very fast-moving pond. You imagine the welcome wagon is probably just a list of chores and a reminder not to get in the way of the actual champions. Your first training sessions within the actual Circus Maximus are a revelation. You've seen diagrams, heard descriptions, but nothing prepares you for the sheer scale of it. It's less a racetrack and more a man-made canyon dedicated to speed and spectacle. The track itself, the arena, is a vast ribbon of packed sand, nearly 2,000 feet long and several hundred wide. The spina, the central barrier, stretches down the middle, adorned with statues, obelisks plundered from Egypt, and the ingenious lap counters, often large bronze dolphins and eggs, one of which was turned or removed to mark each completed circuit. The metae, the three conical turning posts at each end of the spina, look impossibly tight from a distance, and even more terrifying up close. You practice navigating them, feeling the centrifugal force trying to tear you from the chariot, your wheels churning inches from the stone. Even empty, the circus has an aura, a palpable sense of history, of countless triumphs and tragedies played out on its sands. You can almost hear the ghostly roar of centuries of crowds. Or maybe that's just the ringing in your ears from your doctor yelling about your sloppy rein handling. The psychological adjustment is immense. When a few thousand spectators in Ostia felt overwhelming, imagining this place packed with upwards of 150,000, some estimates even suggest 250,000, screaming Romans is almost inconceivable. During your practice runs, you try to picture it to prepare yourself for that sensory assault. The doctors push you harder than ever. Here, any mistake is magnified. The competition within your own faction for a spot in one of the coveted race day teams is ferocious. You're not just racing against other factions anymore, you're racing against your stablemates, all of you desperate for a chance to prove yourselves on the grandest stage. Historians still debate the extent to which race outcomes were predetermined or influenced by betting syndicates, despite the obvious skill involved. While you focus on your craft, you're not naive to the powerful currents of money and influence that swirl around the circus. Your job is to be so undeniably good that such considerations become secondary, at least for you. You learn advanced team tactics. Chariot racing and the Circus Maximus often involved multiple entries from each faction in a single race. Usually 3 chariots per faction, making a field of 12. This wasn't just about individual skill, it was about coordinated strategy. You might be designated as a blocker for your faction's lead charioteer, or your role might be to try and break up the formation of a rival team. These tactics were complex, often communicated through subtle signals during the race, and required immense trust and understanding between teammates. It's like a high-speed chess game, but if you knock over a pawn, it might cause a 10-chariot pileup. The established stars of your faction, men whose names are chanted by the crowds, seem like gods to you. You study them, how they carry themselves, how they prepare, how they handle their horses. Some are aloof, others might offer a rare word of advice to a promising newcomer. You learn about the notorious tactics of rival champions, who is known for aggressive, even dangerous driving, who is a master of the last lap surge. It's a mainstream historical fact that the top charioteers like Gaius Apuleius Diocles, a Lusitanian who raced for an astonishing 24 years, could amass truly colossal fortunes, far exceeding that of many senators, and achieve a level of celebrity that transcended their often humble origins. Their successes are a tantalizing glimpse of what's possible, a powerful motivator. And then, the day you've been working towards for what feels like a lifetime. Your name is on the list. You are scheduled to race. Not as the lead, of course, but as part of your faction's team for one of the day's misses or races. The night before is a torment of anticipation. You meticulously check your gear, your lightweight helmet, your tunic in the faction's colors, the leather fascie for your torso, and of course, your trusty falx, its edge honed. You visit the horses you'll be driving, murmuring to them, checking their legs, their harnesses. They are calm, a stark contrast to the tempest inside you. Race day dawns. The city is already a hive of activity, thousands pouring towards the circus. The formal proceedings begin with the Pampa, a grand procession that enters the circus. Magistrates in their finery, priests, musicians, incense bearers, statues of the gods, and finally the charioteers themselves, riding in their chariots, their teams gleaming, a display of pomp and power. You are part of this, a tiny cog in a vast, magnificent machine. The roar of the crowd as you enter the arena is a physical force, washing over you, vibrating through the very bones of your chariot. It's intoxicating and terrifying in equal measure. You try to keep your expression neutral, betraying none of the turmoil inside. You spot the imperial box, the pulvinar, where the emperor himself might be seated, a distant, powerful presence. You see the blocks of seats reserved for senators, for equestrians, and the vast, teeming stands for the common populace, a sea of faces all focused on you and the other competitors. You draw lots for your starting position in the carceres, the spring-loaded starting gates. A good position is vital. Then the agonizing wait. The pre-race tension is almost unbearable. You might engage in your own quiet rituals, a habit you've developed, perhaps touching a particular part of your chariot, or murmuring a quick plea to Consus, the god associated with the circus, or even to your horses. Some charioteers were known to be deeply superstitious. There's even evidence of fans using deficciones, curse tablets, inscribed with pleas to underworld deities to bind or harm rival charioteers and their horses. It's a detail that underscores the raw, desperate passion invested in these races, a world away from polite sporting rivalries. Thankfully, you're probably more worried about your own performance than curses today, though a little extra luck wouldn't go amiss. The trumpet blares. The white cloth, the mappa, is dropped by the presiding magistrate. The gates of the carceres fly open, and then there is only the thunder. 12 chariots, 48 horses, lunging forward as one, a torrent of animal power and human desperation unleashed onto the sand. The noise is cataclysmic. The roar of the crowd, the pounding of hooves, the shriek of wheels, the shouts of the drivers. You fight for position, your senses straining, every lesson, every instinct, kicking in. The first turn at the Medi is a maelstrom. Chariots jostle, wheels interlock. Dust chokes the air. You see a rival go down, a sickening tangle of horses and splintered wood. There's no time to react, only to steer clear, to hold your line. Your team is running well, responding to your commands, the product of years of training. You settle into the rhythm of the race, 7 grueling laps. Each lap brings its own challenges. You work with your faction teammates, trying to execute the plan. You fend off an aggressive move from a rival blue. You seize an opportunity to overtake a white on the far straight. The crowd is a blur, their roar constant pressure. You are hyper-aware of everything, the position of the other chariots, the condition of your horses, the state of the track. Your arms ache, your back screams, but you push through. The focus required is absolute. One lapse in concentration, one mistake, and it's over. You remember your doctor's voice. Anticipate, don't just react. It's like he's still yelling in your ear, even over the din of 200,000 screaming fans. Maybe he is. Maybe they gave him a really big megaphone. Coming into the final lap, you're in a decent position, not leading, but in the pack. Your faction star is dueling for the lead. Your job is to protect his flank, to ensure no one can make a late run at him. Adrenaline sings through your veins. The final turn at the Medi is chaos. Horses are tiring, drivers are desperate. You hold your position, leaning precariously, your inside wheel almost scraping the stone. Then the final dash to the finish line, marked opposite the magistrate's box. You urge your team on, using the last of their strength and your own. You cross the line. The roar of the crowd reaches a crescendo. You don't know immediately where you finished, beyond not being first. Your faction's lead charioteer has won. A wave of relief so profound it almost buckles your knees washes over you. You've done your part. You survived. You competed in the Circus Maximus. Slowly, you guide your panting, sweat-soaked team towards the exit, the cacophony of the crowd still ringing in your ears. Later, there will be analysis, praise, or criticism. There will be the sweet taste of victory for your faction, the celebrations. For you, there is the quiet satisfaction of a monumental task faced, a terrifying challenge met. Whether you become a Diocles, a legend whose name echoes through centuries, or a footnote in the annals of the circus, you have done what few dared to even dream. You have raced in Rome. The path ahead is uncertain. More races, more training, the constant risk, the fleeting glory. But tonight, under the vast Roman sky, you are a charioteer of the Circus Maximus. And that, for now, is everything. The dust begins to settle metaphorically and literally. The echoes of the crowd, the thunder of hooves, begin to recede into the quiet corners of your mind. You allow the tension to drain from your shoulders, from your arms, from your tightly clenched jaw. All that effort, all that focus can now gently unwind. The meticulous training, the endless drills, the heart-pounding moments of the race all fade into a soft, distant memory, like ripples smoothing out on a calm pond. There's no need to hold the reins so tightly anymore. You can let go, allow yourself to drift. The cheers of the Roman spectators transform into a gentle, sighing breeze, rustling through unseen leaves. The bright, harsh sunlight of the arena softens into a warm, comforting twilight, a gentle glow that invites rest. Feel the strain leave your muscles, replaced by a pleasant heaviness, a comfortable weariness that welcomes sleep. The hard, unyielding track beneath your chariot's wheels becomes a soft, supportive surface, cradling you as you slow down, further and further, until you come to a peaceful, motionless rest. There are no more turns to navigate, no rivals to watch, no finish line to strive for. Only stillness and peace, and the gentle rhythm of your own breathing, slowing, deepening, carrying you towards a place of profound tranquility. The memories of the day, the excitement, the effort, all blur into a beautiful, abstract tapestry of color and sound, now muted, soft, and very, very far away. You did well. You can rest now. Hey everyone, tonight we're journeying back to the fragrant banks of the Nile into the aromatic heart of ancient Egypt. We're not exploring pyramids or deciphering hieroglyphs, but delving into something far more subtle yet equally captivating. The secret ingredients and meticulous craft behind their legendary perfumes and unguents. Imagine workshops filled with exotic resins, fragrant flowers, and bubbling concoctions, where skilled hands transformed nature's bounty into scents fit for gods and pharaohs. It's a far cry from dabbing something behind your ears from a department store bottle. Honestly, if you had to source some of these ingredients yourself with ancient Egyptian tools, you'd probably just opt to smell like the Nile mud. It'd be easier, and let's be honest, probably less likely to involve wrestling a crocodile for its essence. So, before you get too comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Feel free to share where you're listening from and what time it is for you in the comments below. I truly enjoy seeing our community span the globe. Now, let's dim the lights, maybe get that fan going for some gentle white noise, and begin tonight's journey together. You find yourself standing in the warm, perpetually sun-kissed land of Egypt, perhaps during the opulent New Kingdom, a time when the empire flourished and the arts, including the art of perfumery, reached extraordinary heights. The air itself seems to carry 1,000 stories, a blend of river silt, blooming lotus, and the distant, tantalizing hint of incense from a nearby temple. You are an apprentice, fortunate enough to have found a place within the hallowed and often fragrant walls of a perfume workshop. This isn't just any workshop. It might be attached to a grand temple like Karnak, where scents were crafted for the gods themselves, or perhaps it serves a wealthy noble's household, providing luxurious unguents for the living and sacred oils for their journey into the afterlife. Either way, it's a serious business. The ancient Egyptians didn't just wear perfume to smell nice for a date night at the local papyrus scroll library. Scent was deeply woven into the fabric of their existence, for hygiene, for medicine, for religious devotion, and as a vital part of their elaborate preparations for eternity. Your first days, or perhaps even months, are less about sniffing exotic blossoms and more about understanding the foundations, And the foundation of most ancient Egyptian perfumes and unguents wasn't alcohol like today, but oils and fats. You learn to identify the different types: the clear, light moringa oil, pressed from the seeds of the miracle tree; the slightly thicker ben oil, also from a tree nut, prized for its stability and lack of its own strong scent, making it an excellent carrier. Olive oil, though perhaps not as fine as the best from Crete, is also common, especially for more everyday preparations. And then there are the animal fats, rendered from oxen, geese, sometimes even hippopotamus, though that last one was probably a specialist supplier you didn't want to annoy. Your first task might involve the not so glamorous job of purifying these fats, slowly heating them, skimming impurities, a process that fills the workshop with a rather organic aroma before the pleasantries are added. It's the ancient Egyptian equivalent of learning that your dream job as a chef starts with 3 months of washing dishes and peeling potatoes. Humbling, to say the least. The workshop itself is a hive of quiet, focused activity. Sunlight, softened by linen hangings over the windows, illuminates motes of dust and pollen dancing in the air. The walls are lined with shelves holding an array of pottery jars, alabaster containers, and stone bowls. You see heavy stone mortars and pestles of various sizes, some stained with the vibrant hues of petals or the deep browns of resins. There are fine linen cloths for straining, copper or bronze cauldrons for heating, and delicate spoons and spatulas made of ivory or wood. The master perfumer, perhaps an older man or woman with hands permanently stained by fragrant materials and an air of serene authority, moves through the space like a conductor, overseeing every process. They might be known as an Irie Naket, a keeper of the scent, or a similar title denoting their skill. They don't say much, but their eyes miss nothing. Your initial attempts at grinding frankincense will probably earn you a silent, disappointed stare if you're not doing it with the correct, even pressure. You start by working with the local flora, the bounty of the Nile Valley. You're sent out with other apprentices or perhaps trusted servants to gather blue lotus flowers from the riverbanks at dawn, their petals still cool and dew-kissed. You learn to carefully pick white lilies, their fragrance potent and sweet. Marjoram, mint, and chamomile are harvested from herb gardens. Henna flowers, surprisingly fragrant, are gathered for their sweet, slightly spicy notes. Papyrus reeds, you discover, aren't just for making paper. The roots and stems can be crushed and added to unguents for a subtle, earthy aroma, or even used in incense. Your hands become stained with chlorophyll and sticky with plant saps. You learn the rhythm of the seasons, which plants are best harvested when, and how to dry them or process them fresh to capture their fleeting scents. It's a far cry from just ordering essential oils online. This is a hands-on, earth-connected craft. Their Amazon Prime was probably a very tired donkey. One of the simplest techniques you learn is maceration. You'll take a batch of freshly rendered clean fat, perhaps goose fat for a softer unguent, and gently heat it in a wide, shallow bowl. Then you'll stir in crushed petals or fragrant herbs. The mixture will sit for days, sometimes gently warmed by the Egyptian sun, allowing the fat to slowly absorb the volatile oils from the plant matter. Then comes the straining, carefully pressing every last drop of scented fat through fine linen. The process might be repeated multiple times with fresh batches of flowers to build up the intensity of the fragrance. It's slow, laborious work, requiring immense patience. If you rush, you might scorch the fat or fail to extract the full scent. The master perfumer will test your results by rubbing a small amount onto their wrist, inhaling deeply, their expression unreadable. A slight nod is high praise. A frown means you're probably on fat skimming duty for another week. Another technique you might assist with is a rudimentary form of enfleurage, particularly for delicate flowers like jasmine or tuberose, if those more exotic blooms are available through trade or special cultivation. Layers of fat would be spread on flat trays and fresh petals sprinkled over them. After a day or so, the spent petals would be removed and replaced with fresh ones, again and again, until the fat was saturated with their perfume. This process could take weeks, demanding meticulous attention to detail. You begin to understand that creating these perfumes isn't just a craft. It's a meditation, a slow dance with nature. You also begin to understand why these perfumes were so valuable. The sheer amount of raw material and labor that went into a single small jar of highly scented unguent was enormous. It wasn't uncommon for a perfumer to complain that the flowers these days just didn't have the oomph of the flowers from their youth. Some things never change. It's a well established historical fact that perfumes and unguents were absolutely essential in religious rituals throughout ancient Egypt. Daily offerings were made to the statues of gods and goddesses, and these almost always included anointing the divine image with sacred oils and perfumes. Specific scents were associated with particular deities. The god Nefertem, for instance, was the god of perfume, and the blue lotus flower often depicted with a lotus on his head. The scent of the blue lotus was believed to have healing and regenerative properties, symbolizing rebirth. So, when you're carefully infusing lotus petals into oil, you're not just making a cosmetic. You're participating in a sacred tradition, creating something that will bridge the gap between the mortal and divine realms. No pressure, right? Just make sure the gods approve of your blend. You also learn about the resins, the hardened saps of trees, many of which had to be imported from distant lands. Frankincense and myrrh, arriving in dusty caravans from Punt or the Arabian Peninsula, are among the most prized. You learn to sort them by quality, the clearer, lighter pieces often being more valuable. You'll spend hours grinding these resins into fine powders using a heavy stone mortar and pestle. The rhythmic thump and scrape becomes a familiar sound in the workshop. The air fills with their rich, balsamic, and sometimes sharp aromas. These resins are not only fragrant in themselves, but also act as fixatives, helping the perfume to last longer on the skin. Historians still debate whether certain exotic ingredients mentioned in texts, like styrax from Syria or galbanum from Persia, were always truly imported from those specific distant lands, or if these names sometimes became generic terms for similar local resins or perhaps even symbolic allusions, given the immense logistical challenges and costs of ancient trade routes. The master perfumer might speak of true myrrh from the land of Punt with a reverence that suggests it's practically liquid gold, and maybe it was, considering the journey it undertook. One of the most famous and complex Egyptian perfumes you might learn about, or at least hear whispers of its secret formula, is kaifi. This was a renowned temple incense, also used as a perfume and even a medicine. Its recipe was a closely guarded secret, often inscribed in hieroglyphs on temple walls, but the exact proportions and preparation methods could vary. Kaifi was said to contain up to 16 different ingredients, including things like frankincense, myrrh, mastic, juniper berries, calamus, cinnamon, another expensive import from Asia, and even wine, honey, and raisins. A rather intriguing detail often mentioned in connection with kaifi and other complex unguents is the potential inclusion of less obviously fragrant or even slightly unusual base components like wine dregs or specific types of specially treated Nile clay, not for their primary scent but for their properties in binding the other aromas, or perhaps for their symbolic significance within the ritual context. Preparing kaifi was a lengthy, ritualized process, often involving specific prayers or incantations at each stage. The resulting scent was said to be incredibly rich, complex, and deeply calming, capable of easing anxiety and inducing pleasant dreams. Making actual kaifi would be reserved for the most senior perfumers, but as an apprentice, you might be tasked with preparing some of its individual components, like meticulously picking out the best juniper berries or slowly reducing wine to a thick syrup. You quickly learn that there are no shortcuts in this art. Trying to speed up the wine reduction probably just results in burnt sugar and a very unhappy master perfumer. It's the ancient equivalent of leaving the caramel on the stove for too long while you're checking your Instagram, except your Instagram is a papyrus scroll detailing grain shipments. You also begin to understand the different forms these scented products took. There were the unguentia, the scented oils and fats, stored in beautiful alabaster or faience jars. These were applied to the skin and hair, both for their fragrance and for moisturizing in the dry Egyptian climate. Then there were solid perfumes, almost like waxy cones, which could be worn on the head, often on wigs, during banquets. As the body heat melted the cone, it would release its fragrance, an ancient personal scent diffuser. And of course, there was incense in loose powder form or pressed into pellets or cones, burned in temples and homes to purify the air and please the gods. You learn to distinguish the subtle differences in preparation required for each. An unguent needed to be smooth and easily absorbed, while an incense needed to burn slowly and release its fragrance evenly. Your days are long, filled with the sense of the earth and the meticulous demands of your craft. You learn to use your senses in ways you never imagined. Your nose becomes attuned to the slightest variation in fragrance. Your fingers learn the precise texture of perfectly ground resin. Your eyes can judge the quality of a flower at a glance. It's a demanding apprenticeship, physically and mentally. But as you drift off to sleep each night on a simple reed mat, the lingering scent of myrrh or lotus on your hands is a reminder of the ancient, sacred art you are slowly, painstakingly beginning to master. The path to becoming an Irie Neket is long, but the journey itself is steeped in the fragrant magic of ancient Egypt. The rhythm of the workshop has become your own. The sun rises, painting the Nile gold, and you are already there. The familiar sense of drying herbs, simmering oils, and distant incense welcoming you like an old friend. You are no longer merely an observer or a clumsy apprentice, relegated to the endless task of pounding ingredients until your arms ache. You've shown aptitude, patience, and perhaps most importantly, a developing nose, that intuitive understanding of scents that separates a mere laborer from a true perfumer. The master, your Irie Neket, now entrusts you with more responsibility. You might oversee the entire maceration of a batch of lotus flowers, ensuring the gentle heat is perfectly maintained, or be tasked with creating simpler unguents, like a straightforward marjoram-infused oil, from start to finish. The first time a noble lady sends a servant back to the workshop, specifically requesting another jar of your batch of lily unguent, is a quiet thrill, a small, fragrant victory. It's not exactly a gold medal, but in the world of ancient Egyptian perfumery, it's a pretty big deal. You probably celebrate by treating yourself to an extra fig at lunch. Your training now delves into more sophisticated techniques, secrets of the trade passed down through generations. You learn about expression, the art of pressing oils directly from seeds and rinds. For this, the workshop has a sturdy press, perhaps a wedge press where large wooden beams are used to exert immense pressure, or a torsion press, where oil-bearing pulp is placed in a strong cloth bag, and then sticks are inserted at either end and twisted in opposite directions. You wrestle with this contraption, your muscles straining, to extract precious balanos oil from the fruit of the heglig tree, or the rich, nutty oil from moringa seeds. It's hard, physical work, and you quickly realize that every single drop of these fine oils is earned through sweat and effort. The idea of a mechanical, hydraulic press is a distant dream. For now, it's all about good old-fashioned leverage and hoping you don't slip a disc. There's also hushed talk, and perhaps your first tentative involvement in what seems like a magical process, a rudimentary form of steam distillation. Historians still debate the exact methods and extent of early distillation techniques available to ancient Egyptian perfumers, particularly whether they achieved true essential oil separation or more fragrant hydrosols. But your workshop being one of the best experiments. You might assist in setting up a large clay pot containing water and fragrant plant material, perhaps rose petals if they are available from a rich estate's garden, or crushed cedarwood shavings. This pot is heated, and another inverted pot or a series of woolen cloths are placed above it to catch the steam. As the steam condenses, it carries with it the aromatic compounds. The resulting liquid, a fragrant water or a thin layer of scented oil, is carefully collected. It's a slow, inefficient process by modern standards, requiring a keen eye on the fire and a patient hand. But the product is a more concentrated, purer scent than what can be achieved by maceration alone. The first time you smell truly potent rosewater captured this way, it's a revelation, a pure expression of the flower that feels almost alive. It's also probably when you learn that if the fire is too high, you just make very expensive, slightly burnt-smelling steam. You also learn the art of crafting those famous conical head perfumes, often seen in banquet scenes depicted on tomb walls. These weren't just artistic license, they were a real, if rather curious, fashion. You take a base of firm animal fat, perhaps purified ox tallow, or beeswax if the workshop can afford it, and blend it with highly concentrated perfumes. myrrh, cinnamon, frankincense, and floral extracts. The mixture is then carefully molded, perhaps in small pottery forms, into a cone shape. These cones would be placed atop a person's wig or head. As the evening wore on and the festivities warmed up, the body heat would slowly melt the cone, releasing its fragrance and sending little rivulets of scented oil down the wig and shoulders. It's an ingenious, if slightly messy, personal air freshener. You can imagine the laundry bill for those ancient Egyptian party tunics must have been something else. Honey, did you wear the good head cone to the party again? This anointing is never going to wash out. Your olfactory world expands dramatically as you are introduced to a wider array of exotic and imported ingredients. The master perfumer now trusts you to handle these precious materials, understanding their value and their unique properties. You learn to distinguish between different grades of frankincense not just by sight, but by their subtle smoky, citrusy, or piney notes. You unwrap bundles of myrrh, its bittersweet, earthy aroma filling your nostrils. Then there are the even more exotic resins, styrax with its leathery, vanilla-like scent, galbanum, intensely green and slightly sharp, opopanax, often called sweet myrrh, with a warm, honeyed fragrance. One of the most fascinating and frankly oddest to you at first is labdanum. This sticky, dark resin doesn't come directly from a tree in the usual way. Instead, it's painstakingly collected by combing it from the beards and wool of goats that have been grazing among cistus shrubs, commonly known as rock rose. The image of ancient perfumers carefully combing goat beards for precious resin is a wonderfully weird detail that highlights their dedication to sourcing unique aromatics. The scent of labdanum is incredibly complex, leathery, ambery, sweet, and slightly animalic, and it's a powerful fixative. You learn to handle it with care, its stickiness legendary. You're pretty sure that if you dropped a lump of it, it would probably pull the stone floor up with it. Spices carried along perilous trade routes from the furthest reaches of the known world begin to appear on the workshop shelves, their value almost equal to that of gold. Cinnamon and cassia, with their warm, sweet, woody spice, arrive in tightly bound quills or bark chips. You learn to grind them carefully, releasing their potent fragrance, a scent that speaks of distant lands and daring voyages. Cardamom pods, small and unassuming, release an explosion of complex, camphoraceous, and citrusy notes when crushed. These spices are used sparingly, their intensity capable of overpowering more delicate florals if not handled with skill. Incorporating them into a blend is like adding a rare and vibrant color to a painting. It must be done with precision and artistry. The cost of these spices means that a mistake isn't just a bad smell. It's a significant financial loss for the workshop. No pressure when you're grinding up something that costs more than your yearly food budget. Rare woods also play their part. Cedarwood, imported from the mountains of Lebanon, is prized for its clean, dry, balsamic scent. You might work with fine shavings, infusing them into oils, or perhaps even assisting with rudimentary distillations to capture its essence. If the workshop is truly prestigious, it might even acquire sandalwood, a legendary fragrant wood said to come from the distant land of Punt, or even further east, its creamy, sweet, woody aroma unlike anything else. Extracting its scent is a slow process, but the result is a perfume of unparalleled richness and longevity. And then there are the animalics, ingredients whispered about, handled with almost reverent care due to their immense power and rarity. True musk from the musk deer of the Himalayas might only be something you hear legends about, a tiny pod costing a king's ransom, said to impart an unparalleled depth and longevity to any perfume. Civet, a potent secretion from the civet cat, found in Africa and Asia, might be more attainable, though still incredibly expensive. You learn that these substances, often overpowering or even unpleasant in their concentrated form, transform when heavily diluted, adding an almost magical radiance and fixative quality to perfumes. Ambergris, that strange waxy substance found floating in the ocean, a product of sperm whales, might also be known, though its use in ancient Egypt is less certain than in later periods. Handling these animalics is a lesson in subtlety and transformation. A tiny amount can elevate a blend. A drop too much can ruin it. It's the ultimate high-stakes seasoning. It's like cooking with ghost peppers. A little bit is amazing, a lot is a trip to the emergency room, or in this case, a perfume that clears out the entire temple. The master perfumer, your Iyuri Neket, begins to guide you in the true art of blending, the heart of perfumery. It's not enough to know the individual ingredients. You must understand how they interact, how they can be combined to create a scent that is more than the sum of its parts. You learn about fragrance families in an intuitive way, the bright uplift of citrus notes, if available perhaps through rare trade, the delicate allure of florals, the grounding warmth of woods and resins, the intriguing kick of spices. The master might set you tasks. Create an unguent that evokes the freshness of the inundation, or blend an incense that speaks of the quiet mystery of the midnight sky. Your first attempts are likely clumsy, perhaps a muddle of conflicting aromas or a scent that fades too quickly. But with each attempt, guided by the master's critiques, which are becoming slightly more constructive and less overtly despairing, your understanding grows. You start to develop your own olfactory memory, the ability to recall hundreds of different scents and imagine how they might combine. It's a skill that takes years, even decades, to truly hone. Your skills are now called upon for a wider range of preparations. It's not just perfumes for wealthy patrons. You might assist in creating scented kohl, the black eyeliner so characteristic of ancient Egyptians. The kohl powder, galena itself, is often blended with fragrant oils or powdered resins to make it smell pleasant and perhaps even offer some soothing properties to the eyes. You might also prepare scented face powders, using finely ground chalk or clay mixed with fragrant herbs. The line between perfumery and medicine in ancient Egypt was often blurred. Many aromatic plants and resins possessed known antiseptic, anti-inflammatory, or soothing properties. You find yourself preparing unguents described in medical papyri, a salve of myrrh and honey for wounds, a preparation of frankincense and juniper to soothe aching joints, or a stimulating rub of mint and camphoraceous herbs. You learn that a particular blend might be used to repel insects, another to ease headaches, another to aid sleep. This adds another layer to your appreciation of these ingredients. They are not just for pleasure but for well-being, a fragrant pharmacy. You're essentially a scent pharmacist, whipping up ancient Vicks VapoRub, but smelling infinitely better. Perhaps the most solemn and important application of your growing skills is in the preparation of unguents and incense for funerary rites. The ancient Egyptians believed passionately in the afterlife, and the preservation of the body through mummification, along with the correct rituals and offerings, was essential for a successful journey to the West. Perfumes played a crucial role. The 7 sacred oils: secheb, acacia oil conifer resin; hekenu, animal fat tash unknown plant; sefetje, unknown, possibly conifer resin; nacanum, unknown, possibly aromatic oil; tua, turpentine pistachia resin; hat and ash, cedar oil; and hat and chenu, Libyan oil, unknown, were a canonical set used from the Old Kingdom onwards in the opening of the mouth ceremony and other rituals to reanimate the deceased and prepare them for the afterlife. You might be tasked with meticulously preparing one of these sacred oils following ancient, precise recipes. The responsibility is immense. These aren't just perfumes, they are spiritual tools vital for eternal life. You handle the ingredients with a reverence that transcends their mere aromatic properties. You learn about the specific scents favored for mummification. Copious amounts of myrrh and cassia used to pack the body cavities, not just for their fragrance, but for their preservative qualities. You create rich, resinous unguents to anoint the linen wrappings layer by layer. The goal is to preserve the body and make it sweet-smelling, pleasing to the gods of the underworld. It's a sobering thought to be so intimately involved in preparing someone for eternity. It gives your work a profound sense of purpose. You realize that the scents you create will be among the last earthly sensations a person experiences before their long journey, and perhaps the first they encounter in the fields of Aru. It's a far cry from just trying to make something that smells nice for a party. This is perfumery on a cosmic scale. The skills you're honing are not just for the living, but for the dead, and for the gods themselves. A fragrant thread connecting all realms of existence in the ancient Egyptian worldview. The years have spun by, measured not just in the rise and fall of the Nile's inundation, but in the subtle maturation of countless batches of perfume, the gradual deepening of your own understanding. You are no longer the apprentice fumbling with the mortar and pestle, nor the junior perfumer nervously presenting your first solo creations. You have developed your own particular strengths, your own signature, if you will. Perhaps you are known for your exquisite floral unguents, capturing the fleeting soul of the lily or the blue lotus with unparalleled fidelity. Or maybe your skill lies in the complex, smoky depths of temple incenses like Kai-Fi, your blends sought after for their profound ability to calm the spirit and elevate the senses. You might even be one of the few entrusted with the precise formulation of the most sacred funerary oils, a responsibility that weighs heavily but also fills you with a quiet pride. It's one thing to make a perfume that someone enjoys for an evening. It's another entirely to craft a scent believed to accompany a soul into eternity. The customer reviews for that are probably a bit harder to come by. Commissions now come from the highest echelons of Egyptian society. A high priest from the temple of Amun-Ra might request a special batch of incense for a major festival, specifying rare resins and a particular quality of frankincense that can only be sourced from the distant land of Punt. A noblewoman preparing for her said festival might desire a unique perfume, something no one else possesses, a scent that will speak of her power, her beauty, and her devotion to the gods. Perhaps you are even called upon to contribute to the vast quantities of perfumed oils and unguents required for a royal burial. A task of immense prestige, but also immense pressure. For such occasions, only the finest ingredients are used. Myrrh that gleams like dark amber, cinnamon bark brought at great expense from across the seas, flowers picked at the perfect moment of their bloom. The containers themselves are works of art, intricately carved alabaster jars, faience vessels inlaid with precious stones, sometimes even gold or silver. Your creations are destined to anoint the bodies of queens and pharaohs, to perfume the air of their magnificent tombs. It's a long way from skimming goose fat. You become more involved in the business side of the workshop. You learn to deal with the shrewd merchants who arrive with their caravans, their ships laden with aromatic treasures from Nubia, the Levant, or even further afield. You haggle over prices for bundles of fragrant woods, sacks of resins, and small, carefully wrapped packages of exotic spices. You develop a keen sense of quality, able to spot inferior goods or an attempt to adulterate precious materials. The availability and price of these ingredients can fluctuate wildly, dependent on harvests in distant lands, the dangers of trade routes, or even political relationships between kingdoms. It's a well-documented historical fact that Egyptian perfumes and their key ingredients, like frankincense and myrrh, were highly prized commodities exported throughout the ancient Mediterranean world, significantly influencing Greek and Roman perfumery traditions. Famous Egyptian perfume centers like Mendes in the Delta were renowned for their specific recipes, such as the Mendesian perfume, which became famous across cultures. Your workshop is part of this vast, fragrant network of trade and artistry. You might even be asked for your opinion on whether to invest heavily in a large shipment of cedarwood when the price is low, or whether a new, unknown resin from a Kushite trader is worth experimenting with. It's like the ancient stock market, but instead of shares, you're trading in smells. While tradition, especially in religious perfumery, is paramount, the formulas for sacred oils and temple incenses have been passed down for generations and are not to be tampered with lightly. There is still room for subtle innovation in perfumes for personal use. Perhaps you experiment with a new combination of floral notes or a different balance of spices in a warming winter unguent. If your creation finds favor, if it becomes popular among the elite, it can bring great prestige to your workshop and to you. However, the line between innovation and disrespecting tradition is a fine one. You also learn the importance of meticulous quality control. Every batch must be consistent. A noble patron expects their favorite perfume to smell exactly the same every time they purchase it. This requires precise measurements, careful attention to every stage of the process, and a well-trained nose to catch any deviations. You might even have your own coded way of keeping notes, symbols or markings on papyrus to denote specific ingredients, proportions, or steps in a complex recipe, especially for those blends unique to your workshop. These aren't exactly patents, but they serve a similar purpose in guarding trade secrets. Historians still debate the precise social status of master perfumers in ancient Egypt. Were they considered high-ranking priests due to their involvement in temple rituals, highly skilled and respected artisans, or perhaps something akin to early chemists and entrepreneurs, managing valuable resources and complex production processes? In truth, you feel like a bit of all three. There is a spiritual dimension to your work, a deep artistic satisfaction, and a pragmatic need to manage resources and create products that are both beautiful and effective. Your life is a blend of the sacred and the mundane, the artistic and the practical. You might be involved in training the next generation of apprentices, seeing in their eager, sometimes clumsy, efforts a reflection of your own past. You try to pass on not just the techniques, but the reverence for the ingredients, the patience required, the intuitive understanding that cannot be taught from a scroll, but must be cultivated through experience. You show them how to truly listen to the sense, to understand their language. It's a legacy passed from hand to hand, from nose to nose. You might even have a special tool, perhaps a perfume palette, a shallow bowl or dish meticulously crafted from fine siltstone or polished alabaster, not used for grinding, but for the final, delicate blending of minute quantities of precious essences. Here, you would combine drops of different concentrated floral macerations or resin solutions, observing their color, their texture, their combined aroma as they meld together, making those final, crucial adjustments before committing to a larger batch. It's your artist's palette where you paint with scent. Sometimes, as you work late in the quiet of the workshop, the air thick with the complex harmony of your creations, you reflect on the enduring power of what you do. These scents are more than just pleasant smells. They are memory, they are emotion, they are a connection to the divine. They soothe the sick, honor the gods, beautify the living, and accompany the dead on their journey to the afterlife. The perfumes you craft today might be sealed in a tomb, only to be rediscovered thousands of years in the future, their fragrance, however faint, a ghostly whisper from your own time. It's a profound thought that your skill, your art, can transcend your own lifetime in such an intimate, tangible way. You're not building pyramids, but you are creating something that, in its own way, strives for eternity. You might even have specific, quiet rituals you perform over your creations, especially those destined for sacred purposes or for individuals you respect. It wouldn't be surprising if perfumers, much like other artisans or healers, whispered short incantations or prayers over their blending bowls, asking for the blessing of Nefertem or Hathor, or simply imbuing the perfume with positive intentions for its wearer. A small personal touch of magic to enhance its efficacy or its beauty. This isn't about grand temple ritual, but a quiet, personal devotion to the spirit of the craft. It's your way of adding a little extra heka, or magic, to the mix. The sun dips below the western horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple, much like the vibrant colors of some of the flowers you work with. The workshop slowly empties, the tools are cleaned and put away. A final check on a slowly macerating batch of oil, a lingering sniff of a newly finished unguent. You step out into the cooling evening air, the scent of your day's work clinging to your clothes and skin. A perfume more complex and personal than any single creation. You are a guardian of ancient secrets, a weaver of olfactory dreams, a vital part of the fragrant tapestry of Egyptian life. Your hands may be tired, but your spirit is content. You have brought beauty, comfort, and a touch of the divine into the world, one carefully crafted scent at a time. The subtle aromas of your workshop begin to fade into the gentle quiet of the night. The vibrant lotus, the rich myrrh, the warm cinnamon, all these potent scents soften, becoming distant, soothing whispers. Allow the meticulous focus of your day to dissolve, like incense smoke drifting on a still breeze. There are no more ingredients to measure, no more oils to blend, no more delicate tasks requiring your keen attention. Only the deep, restorative peace of the Egyptian night. Feel your body grow heavy and relaxed, sinking comfortably into your rest. The warmth of the Nile sun transforms into a gentle, enveloping coziness. The sounds of the bustling workshop give way to a profound silence broken only by the soft rhythm of your own breathing. Let each breath guide you further away from the day's efforts, deeper into a state of serene calm. The memories of ancient scents, of sacred rituals, and everyday beauty now become a soft, swirling mist, lulling you gently, peacefully. There is nothing left to do but rest, to drift, to dream in the land where perfume was an art, a science, and a form of magic. Good night.